To say, and we've got a lot to talk about here, that we carved out a good chunk of time for the former chairman, former Speaker Pro Tem, former chairman of the Financial Services Committee, I should note, Patrick McHenry, and Bloomberg politics contributor. It's great to see you.
Great to be with you.
I don't even know where to begin here, so we may as well start with Iran since we're already talking about it. War powers are out the window. The president appears to have the green light from Congress. Will he get a blank check when he asks for a supplemental?
That's the question for Congress. The war powers resolution process is one that is really mostly a partisan football. And this has happened from time to time over the last 50 years. The real question for Congress is on funding, right? Mm-hmm. This requires the president to go make the case to the American people on a timeline and a set of goals. The goals can dictate the timeline, right? But you have to have one of those public markers, right? We currently don't have that from the administration, at least not, as Kayleigh said, on a consistent basis from the president and from important cabinet leaders. That means that congressional leaders are in the dark about those goals and therefore the timeline. They're going to be put to answering the question here on replenishing the munitions that are being used in a really substantial way. And one of the largest actions we've taken since Barack Obama's first year in office. And so this is going to be a large funding request. Congress is going to have to go through this. Yep. It will require a bipartisan vote in both the House and the Senate. Which means the Democratic Party will have to have a sense of the meaning and purpose of this as well.
Well, we've heard from at least one Democrat here at Bloomberg. Joe spoke with your former colleague, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, who suggested she actually would be open for a supplemental.
Unsolicited.
She thinks, that the troops need to be supported effectively, knowing that this is an election year. Every decision by these representatives is being made with that in mind. Can Democrats really be seen voting against the troops if this comes down?
No. And therefore, it then exacerbates the divide within the Democratic Party. You have a very substantial anti-Semitic wing on the progressive left that has now entered politics. You have some of that on the right, but it's much more predominant on the progressive left. This will be exacerbated by our coordination with Israel against our mutual enemy in Iran. You also have that question on the Republican side of the aisle, which is the divide between the anti-interventionist MAGA wing that has had a substantial voice in the president's administration, namely with J.D. Vance, and those that are okay with intervention to some degree. So that exacerbates the divide in both parties when you're going for funding on Capitol Hill.
So with that said, it's likely to pass, it sounds like, with the help of some Democrats. Does that take the place of reconciliation? Because every time we bring this up, somebody's got an idea of what they want to attach to it.
Sure. I think reconciliation is going to be a great talk for Republicans for the next 6 months. I don't see it as a real fire drill. I think this is it's going to be very difficult for the House to just pass normal pieces of legislation on party line votes, given how narrow the majority is in the U.S. House. Okay. The U.S. Senate, I think Republicans are much more united in the U.S. Senate than they are in the U.S. House. They actually have the same number of differential between their majorities, right? With Republicans with 53 seats in the Senate, and House Republicans with about a six vote margin currently. So it's a really tight thing to get legislation through the House. So reconciliation, it's a shirts and skins, Republicans versus Democrat operation. It's going to be very difficult for the House Republicans to pull this thing together.
So now's the chance.
Best case. And it's currently not best case politically for Republicans right now.
I want to ask you about what we were dealing with at this time yesterday, which was the tweet that was then deleted by the Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, that a U.S. Navy escort had happened and a tanker had gotten through the Strait of Hormuz for that reason. We saw movement in oil prices. And I'm asking you this as the former chair of the Financial Services Committee. Does that not smack of, even if inadvertent, market manipulation here? I just, when we know that there is so much vulnerability in financial markets right now to the developments around this conflict, does the administration not need to be much more careful?
No, they need to be very careful. I mean, these tweets can have hundreds of billions of dollars worth of impact right now.
Yeah. That would be one of them.
It says two things, though. One is that everything hangs on the Straits of Hormuz right now, economically. Globally, our economy hangs off this narrow spit of water where you get the predominant source of energy for the world. Energy markets, the second piece is that these markets are not driven by fundamentals right now. They're driven by pure a motion. If we have some sense of certainty timeline, like President Trump gave us 2 days ago, there was a great calming of the market then. Yeah. And anything that upsets that, either for good or for bad, creates these wild swings right now. But over time, if we're talking about this in a month's time, the fundamentals will come to bear. And that is a really troublesome thing for affordability domestically, a troublesome thing for domestic politics in particular. But the tweet, it really shows two things, really.
Well, everything at the moment that we're talking about on Capitol Hill is on ice because of the SAVE Act. The president says he won't sign anything.
Save America Act.
Save America. There are a couple of versions. Thank you for correcting me on that. Save America Act, he says, is the priority. That's beyond, I guess, DHS even confirming a new secretary. I don't know, but John Thune doesn't like this idea of the standing filibuster and doesn't think he has the votes anyway. Listen to the Senate Majority Leader talking about this just earlier.
We don't have the votes either to proceed, get on a talking filibuster, nor to sustain one if we got on it. But that is just a function of math. And there isn't anything I can do about that. I mean, I understand the president's got a passion to see this issue addressed, as we all do.
Does he understand that, though?
Well, we've conveyed that to him, but we will continue to make that argument.
And they are. The president was just asked about it as he was leaving the White House. He said, hey, John Thune's the leader. It's his job to get the votes. Does that mean the Congress is shut indefinitely?
Of course not. But the first thing I would say is John Thune is such a master, right? And how he responded. We understood what he said with his response without saying it. President Trump understood the subtle art of this. But I mentioned domestic politics at the end of this question about affordability and oil prices and everything else. The pressure point on Republicans right now is that we have a president that is underwater. My friends on Capitol Hill have this challenge. Going into midterm election year, the president's numbers do not improve from January through Election Day. That's been the case for the last 50 years. And public opinion surveys, no matter how popular you are or unpopular you are in January, your numbers do not improve by Election Day of a midterm. So now we're in this case where that is a problem for Republicans. Donald Trump's underwater. The view of the American people on the state of our economy and their economics, which is much more important than the state of GDP growth or anything else, that is highly negative by the American people. Oil prices will exacerbate this, so we need other sets of things to point to. My friends in the Republican Party need other things for the American people to think about rather than their pocketbook, because they're not happy with their pocketbook. And the big fight here is on immigration. Donald Trump's secret sauce coming into the White House the first time and the second time has been on immigration and border security. He's trying to get the band back together. And that's what the SAVE Act is all about, to stoke what was a powerful tool that they lost because of ineptitude by DHS and how they handled things in Minneapolis and a few other states. They're trying to get that back together and get the political advantage on immigration back. And the SAVE Act and the fight on the SAVE Act is one mechanism to do that. A valiant fight that will not go much of anywhere in the U.S. Senate.
Well, perhaps not, unless Senator John Cornyn has his way. This guy was almost the John that was the Senate Majority Leader. He's out with an op-ed in the New York Post today, noting that, yes, historically he has always supported the filibuster and that 60-vote threshold. He says leaders must take stock and adapt when the reality on the ground changes. He says, after careful consideration, I will support whatever changes to Senate rules that may prove necessary for us to get the Save America Act passed. Is that just a lot of words for saying President Trump, please endorse me in my re-election campaign?
You've summarized it. That would be, put that into any AI, and you're going to get out the key here. Politics are a fickle thing, but let's just step back.
So much
Widen
for
the aperture a bit.
Yeah.
So Republicans, there's this talk among many Senate Republicans, they want to end the filibuster for voting access. What did Democrats want to do at the beginning of the Biden administration?
That's
Their first piece of legislation was to rewrite state election laws and federalize them. Now, and by the way, undo the filibuster in order for that one narrow thing. And now Republicans are talking about the same thing. Long term, that does end the filibuster when both parties are trying to rip it apart for their own domestic politics, their own political case, and what they view as their ability to win the next election. I think this really shows that these rules in the Senate are tenuous at best.
Wow. So a lot of efforts are running into the wall here. And next week,
we're
going to find out.
It's an election year. This is what happens in an election year.
So what happens to the Department of Homeland Security? There's a new secretary at hand. Rand Paul just made pretty clear he's going to have maybe a bumpy confirmation hearing at least, but everyone sees him getting confirmed. Does that grease the skids on reopening the agency?
It does, and it enables Democrats to get enough space and time so that they can actually have a sensible vote and come to a sensible outcome. I think Markwayne Mullin is a great choice by President Trump for a couple of reasons. One, he does meet Trump's objectives for Department of Homeland Security and immigration generally.
Yep.
Number one. Number two, he has good relationships on both sides of the aisle in the Senate and the U.S. House. He showed that as a friend of mine in the U.S. House, that he could talk to anyone, no matter the party, no matter the disagreements. And he is, in that way, a moderating voice for really what has been a politically perilous and fraught debate on immigration. Yeah. I think that will enable Democrat officials to actually do something rational, fund the department, especially if there's any risk, like we're hearing with this report on California.
All right, Mr. Chairman. Always great to have you. Of course, a Bloomberg Politics contributor now, but the former chair of the House Financial Services Committee, Patrick McHenry, here with us on the early edition of Balance of Power.